So you're struggling to gain ranks and SR in Warzone Resurgence Ranked, and all of your games just kind of look exactly like this. I can't jump! Might be dead here. Yeah. That sucks. You feel stuck and you feel like giving up on your ranked play adventures altogether. Well, luckily, I have some simple tips and tricks that we're about to dive into that if you follow, I guarantee you will begin climbing ranks faster than you can even imagine. So stick around as we jump into some simple tips and tricks for Warzone Resurgence Ranked. To start out your ranked play adventures, you need to be breaking down each individual game on Fortune's Keep into 3 different sections. So to keep consistent with those Warzone Resurgence Ranked games, we're going to be breaking this video up into 3 sections as well, and that's just going to be the early game as well as some general concepts, the mid game, and then the late game. All 3 of which are super important to understand the differences of how you want to play the game. Because if you're not doing things to the T each game, your squad is going to end up getting wiped easily. So without any further ado, let's start off with some early game tips and some general concepts for Warzone Resurgence Ranked. If you don't know how Warzone Ranked Play or the SR system works, we're going to jump into it a little bit here, but I do highly recommend that you read the article linked in the description to Raven Software's breakdown of Warzone Resurgence Ranked. This will help you get a far better and clearer understanding of exactly how the ranked system works in Warzone. And while you're down there clicking that link, click the subscribe button for me. And if you find anything in this video that has helped you gain a better knowledge of the rank system or how to gain ranks in Warzone, hit that thumbs up for me. Thanks. So now, as you can see, the blog that I was just referring to has a ton of information, but we're going to break down a couple sections here, namely the actual ranks and how the SR system works. So a breakdown of the ranks are on screen right now, and as you can see, you start off with the bronze division, then you can move up through silver, gold, platinum, diamond, crimson, iridescent, or top 250, and those are going to be obviously the basically pros at this game. Each individual division has 3 tiers within that division that you need to climb through in order to get to the next division, and that is aside from iridescent and top 250. Now SR is gained in a number of ways, namely kills, assists, kills by squad mates, and placements. Now as for a breakdown of earning SR, here is exactly how it's done, and now I implore you to actually go through that link that is in the description and read this entire blog to gain a far better understanding of how this system works. So first off, you can get kills and assists. Now for placement, it starts with the top 12 squads and you gain a plus 20 SR boost, and it goes all the way down to the first squad. If you win the game, you get a plus 100 SR boost at the end of the game. If you're down bad and your 2 squad mates are dead, then it's important that you kind of just hide out, play the playing field, and let the game progress so that you can get further placements in the game. I do want to touch on 2 more things, because this is a resurgence mode. You can respawn without having to go through the gulag or your teammate buying you back until later in the game anyways. So there are some fees implemented to avoid you gaining way too much or inflating way too much SR on your rank, and to kind of penalize you for dying. So these fees go into effect starting in silver 1, and they get pretty high all the way up to iridescent and top 250, ending at -7 SR per death. And then lastly is going to be the deployment fee. Now this is a huge one because this is where you're going to lose your SR. So in the bronze division, your deployment fee is actually free, and then it increases all the way up through the divisions to -280 SR at the top tier ranks. Now this is important because it basically means that as you climb in your divisions, you're going to need to get more and more kills or assists in order to gain back that SR that you lose just for dropping into a game. And that's enough of the Ranked Resurgence blog. Again, I really suggest reading through that blog so that you gain a full understanding of how ranked works. Moving on to the second part of section 1, we're going to now talk about the early game and exactly what you're going to want to do to maximize your placements and allow yourself to go further and further into each of your games. The early game is, in my opinion, the most important part of your ranked play games. And depending how you play it, it's going to set you up to either succeed every game or fail. And here's why. If you're dropping into one of the hottest spots on the game, like the Keep, then you're probably going to fail. And beyond bronze, that means you're going to lose SR. However, if you drop into a more safe place that isn't very highly contested, then you are going to be able to loot up, get some decent guns, maybe get a couple kills or assists by shooting people that are far away, gain some placements because you're lasting longer in the games, and eventually get your loadout or even 2 loadouts. Now I say 2 loadouts because another important thing about the early game is that that's exactly what you want to do. You want to be able to set your team up for success by getting 2 loadouts. One of them is going to be the free loadout that you get after the first zone, and the other more important one is going to be one that you purchase as a squad. Now it's super important to try and get 2 loadouts in the early game because when all members of your squad use a loadout, it goes away. Meaning that if you die and there's still a team around where you died, you have no way to regain and get loadout guns again. But if you have 2 loadouts, then you have a way of getting your guns again. And the way loadouts work is that if all 3 members of your squad do not hit that loadout, then it will stay up forever. So if you have one squad mate popping off in the game and they only use that first loadout that you got, then your second loadout will stay up for as long as it's in zone. So now as for what you want your loadout to actually be, I'm not going to go into really specifics as to like exact, weapons that you want to choose. Right now, as a recording of this video, it is February 21st. So you do want to be using either the Ram 7 or the MTZ 762, and then the HRM or the AMR as your SMG. But again, we have a few other videos on the channel going over those loadouts that if you want to check out, you can do so. So we're not going to dive into exact loadouts that you want to use here. But on the topic of loadouts, I do want to talk about inventory management. Inventory management is super important because of rotations and the way that assists work. I say rotations because you need smokes. Smoke grenades are obviously the meta. They have always been in ranked and not even ranked. As long as you have smoke grenades, you're pretty safe to rotate anywhere on the map. So my suggestion to you is that no matter what, you always have 2 extra smokes in your bag. That way you have 4 total, your team then has 12 total, and you can pretty much rotate in or out of any situation on the map that you might get into. Now, secondly, on inventory management is you're going to want at least 3 of your bag slots to be filled with plates. That gives you 15 total extra plates so that you always have extra health that you can use in a sticky situation. And then lastly, the 5th spot in your bag, you're going to want to fill with either an extra clip of AR ammo or an extra grenade, whether that be Semtex or frag grenade. Now, if ranked play were on a big map like Urzikstan, I would suggest filling that extra slot with extra AR ammo. However, because it's Fortune's Keep, you're not really shooting people at too far of distance and wasting your AR ammo, so I do recommend filling that with a Semtex or a frag grenade instead. This allows you to always be able to throw a Semtex if you need to get someone off high ground, or if you have a knock somewhere, you can finish them off with the Semtex. Now let's move on to the mid game. For the mid game, you want to make sure that your team is always sticking together and that you are in a high ground situation at all times. High ground is king on pretty much any Warzone map, as we've all known for the past few years, because you can always head peek an edge and get the advantage on the enemy. Now moving on to why you should always be sticking together as a squad is because that's what everybody does anyways. A lot of people are now stacking as 3 in a building or in one area and beaming you from multiple areas. So going off on your own anytime past like second zone really is just going to hurt your team overall. And then lastly, for rotations in the mid game, there are some areas that you do want to avoid at all costs, and that is going to be inside the keep for a number of reasons, most of which is that it's just too big and there's not a lot of coverage within the keep. However, if you go on top of the keep, that is completely okay. And that's because there's a lot of head glitches that you could do and a lot of walls and whatnot that you can run behind and save yourself in a sticky situation. Another area that you want to avoid completely at any point in the map, in my opinion, is the underground area in the middle of the map. It's just too confusing. Yeah, if you spend a lot of time down there, you can get used to it and whatnot, but I highly just recommend that you just stay away from it. And then lastly is going to be like the town in the top left of the map with all the buildings and whatnot. It can get hectic in there, and most times the storm doesn't even end in that area. The zone will pull away from you. So in those cases, you're going to be rotating out in the open in graveyard or the middle of the map, which is just not ideal. Now let's move on to the late game, because the late game is the most important piece of all of this. So for the late game, we're going to kind of break this up into a couple sections here because it kind of takes into account everything that we've already talked about between the early and mid games and combines it all into one, as well as adding a couple new things that you want to consider. So we all know it can be crazy and super hectic in late game on any map, whether that be Urzikstan or Fortune's Keep, Vandal, Ashika, whatever it might be. But that craziness is multiplied exponentially in ranked play because everyone wants to win, and winning gets you the most SR. So here are some things that you want to consider. We already talked about positioning and inventory management, meaning that you want to be always on high ground, especially in the late game. A lot of the end zones are going to have 2 tiers of elevation, one being high obviously and one being super low, whether that be in the middle of the map or in the water somewhere on the outskirts of the map. So that is something that you always want to consider, that your team is making sure that you are on top of the map and on as high of ground as possible. Now secondly, because of that, you want to make sure that you have a gas mask, or more preferably a golden gas mask. Because of the multiple elevation tiers that the map has, a lot of people at the end of the game, if if their teammates are dead, they're just gonna rat in the low ground of the map. So if you have access to a gas mask or stims or whatever it might be, you probably are gonna outlast them after 5th zone in the final circle. And even in those cases, your team can also use that equipment, the gas mask or the stim, to rotate into the zone, find them underneath, and then get the wipe on them. Now for inventory management in the late game, you kind of want to look at how many squads are left. If zone is pulling towards you or where you are, then you don't really need smokes. However, you might still want to keep them in your bag. You could go into a building, into like the bathroom of a building or something, and find yourself some stims, which, as I was just saying, might help you out survive somebody in the gas. Another thing to consider is where the buy stations are around you in the late games. If you're able to control a buy station, then that gives you access to precision strikes, clusters, UAVs, gas masks, ammo boxes, armor boxes, anything you might need to outlast your opponents. I want to put emphasis right now on precision strikes because they are super vital to winning games. Having a precision strike late game can force the enemy to rotate out of a building or something where they might die and into the open where you can kill them. Now lastly, to tie everything together, use your teammate to your advantage. If all three of you are up in the final zones, that means that your inventory and access to a number of equipment has tripled. That means you have 3x the smokes, that means you have 3x the money, the ammo boxes, the plate boxes, the kill streak, everything. So use your teammates to your advantage. If you suspect that there's 2 people left and they're underneath you because you have high ground, send one of your teammates down to do some recon. Then the other 2 stay up top in the high ground with gas masks, stims, or whatever they might need. And the hopes are that one of your teammates might either be able to get a knock or just call out where they are. If they get a knock, okay, then you have a 2v1 advantage. Stick with your team at the end of the game and I guarantee you that success will come. If you did find any of this information to be of help to you or fruitful, whatever it might be, then I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. And on the topic of loadouts, because obviously that is super important, if you want to use my Ram 7 loadout that you've seen throughout the gameplay in this video, then you should click the video that's on screen right now because I go over the exact loadout that I am using in this game.